Hello there and welcome back to another video. With Solar Raid now in full swing, it's time to have a look at the ranked map pool and see where we sit. Of course, heading into this season, Favela was yoinked out finally, and Nighthaven Labs joined the pool. And for the first time, the new addition to the pool could not be banned, so it's being played quite a lot. And you might be surprised where I put it on this list. We're just going to work through the maps that are down at the bottom. I'll talk through why I think they deserve to be where I put them. And of course, feel free to flame me in the comments. This is what this is all about. Up first is Coastline, and I have decided to put this in B tier. Now, Coastline is no longer in competitive play even after its small rework. It hasn't quite found its way back in. It's very, very hard to defend and attack this map. It's just a super awkward map with the spacing. However, in ranked, it doesn't quite suffer as much. So it is just a mid map for now. Up next is Oregon, and we're going to put Oregon in S tier. Just Oregon, I'm sure some will say, is quite stale, and to that I agree. It's now been in the map pool in its current form for a couple of years, and there isn't too much to innovate on. However, in ranked, it's just a solid map. It can get boring, it can get a little bit repetitive. However, it is a good, and in my opinion, still a well-balanced map, even in the current meta. So that's why it is in S tier. Up next, Emerald Plains. And this is going straight into delete. I genuinely think that this map is horrible. It's clear that it's got the remnants of the Bartlett University map in which it was sort of modeled on. Has a lot of issues. It's not particularly fun to play. I will say it is still quite balanced, but I think that's because a lot of people haven't put the time and effort into trying to exploit the map, and that's because it's just not a very fun one to play. I think with maybe a bigger focus on exterior breaches and just more opportunities for counterplay, it could be a little bit more fun, but in its current form, way too heavy on window play and rappel play, and in general, the map doesn't have as much of a natural flow as a lot of the really good ranked maps do. On to Chalet next then, and this is going straight up into S tier, and in fact, for now at least, I'm putting it as the #1 ranked map, which might be shocking. I'm not too sure. Personally, I was a hater of Chalet. Even when it first came out in its reworked form, I did not like the map. I did not want to learn it. I did not want to play it. It just didn't seem to make sense to me. However, now that we've seen it in competitive, and now we're seeing it really played at a high level, this map's really fun. Every single bomb site is balanced, in my opinion. There's a lot of good play that the attack and defense can make. It suits the frag meta at the moment as well. So I think Chalet is just a great map. It has all the elements, in my opinion, that make a good map. Good focus on exterior breaches. You can create footholds as the attack. The defense gets rewarded for vertical extensions. It has it all. So that is why it is at the top of S tier. Up next then is Skyscraper, and I'm going to put that in A tier. Skyscraper is a really hard one I found to put on this list, because for ranked, it can be really difficult to play. For it to be its most enjoyable, you must 5-stack on this map. It's essentially a glorified theme park in that regard, the way that you sort of need to do map sweeps. And if you're solo queuing, that's not going to be fun. As we've seen this map evolve a little bit more in competitive, we have seen more options open up. We've even seen sites like Bedroom become viable, which I think has made the map more exciting. It is a slogfest. It's a very difficult map. It's very tricky to play on either side, but it is a rewarding map, I think, in my opinion. So if you're willing to grit your teeth, sweat a little bit, then Skyscraper for me is A tier. Following Skyscraper is a similar map, but in an older form in some respects, I guess. Theme Park. Theme Park I'm going to put in B tier, and in my opinion, it's one of the more boring maps to play because it does play out very similarly, and it's also a very slow and very linear map. So if you love that sort of structure, then perhaps you would put this map a little bit higher, but if you want a map that conforms better to the meta at the moment of fragging and playing a little bit more on the fly, Theme Park's not the map. So that's why it's in B tier. It's a solid map. It's a pretty competitive map. However, it's kind of stale and doesn't really suit the game at the moment. Villa then, up next, one of the OGs at this point. It's been in the game for a really, really long time, unchanged, and it still holds up, in my opinion. It is an A tier map. If you want to create a couple of strats on living, you can make every site on this map viable, and it's relatively fun to attack. Again, can suffer from being boring at times. However, you often have, at minimum, 2 major routes for attack every round, and it introduces some really fun counterplay depending on how your stack wants to play the map. So for me, Villa is A tier. Hopefully it will get spiced up and adjusted a little bit going forward. The big problem with the map still is that basement just being completely off limits, really, except for rotations, which I feel could be utilized better. So maybe going forward that will change. Alrighty, up next then is Border, and we're just going to slip it in between Coast and Theme for now. I found this one really tough. Border is very similar to Coastline, the way it's structured, the way it's played. I think there are some interesting ideas on this map, but it can be such a slog as the attack just to get into the map. It does keep you active all the time. You're never sitting still, whether you're attacking or defending on this map, so I'll give it that. But having to contest so hard just for any kind of map presence does get bothersome after a while. And even with the map being in competitive, attackers have not really found a way to negate that. So this map I don't think is amazing. It's a mid-ranked map, and if this was a competitive ranking, I would probably want it out of the pool. Up next then is Outback, and this will be the first C tier map, only narrowly in C tier. I was very tempted to put this one in B tier as well, but putting it on the same level as Border and Theme Park, which are competitive maps, didn't quite feel right. I think Outback is an okay ranked map. It's actually not too bad. It's certainly improved in its remake. The addition of the exterior walls made the map feel a lot more like Siege, and it's a lot more fun to play both as attack and defense. It still does suffer from a couple of issues, some really annoying Voltunes that are important for map control, and otherwise a pretty stale meta that didn't change too much from the remake outside of those walls. So Outback, still C tier. It's okay. I don't think it deserves as much hate as it probably gets, but on the flip side, it's not quite good enough to be a competitive map. Following Outback then is Stadium, and if you don't know, it's a combination of Border and Coastline. You put together 2 overdone and very annoying to play maps in the meta. You get this trash. Look, I'm glad they put it in the ranked pool just to see if maybe it would stick, but it's not really going to get much playtime. Every time I've seen it available to be banned, it has been. No one wants to touch it with the 10-foot pole, which makes sense. And I think it's probably a good casual map, but keep it out of ranked. All right, time for another S tier map. Clubhouse will slide it just in the middle. Clubhouse, an absolute OG, in from the beginning, reworked a couple times, and I think it's in really good shape at the moment. Of all the maps on the pool, it is very, I guess, close to Oregon in the sense that it is a little bit stale, and you're not going to have too much room to innovate and to improve upon what is a really optimized meta on the map at the moment. But again, it always offers a solid, balanced experience. It has become increasingly difficult to defend sites like CCTV, for instance, depending on bans, but we have seen Bar be viable if teams are willing to be brave and go there. So Clubhouse, just a solid map. You can never really go wrong on it. No one's really going to be too disappointed playing Clubhouse. Next then we have Kafe, and that's going straight in C tier. Very close to putting it in the delete tier, but I thought that considering it's still in competitive, it probably has some life left in it in ranked. It can be very hit or miss in ranked, depending on how you want to approach it. I think attacking is the most grueling part of the map, because if you want to play it the most meta way and probably the most optimal, it all revolves around that red hatch drop. You must play it, and if the defense is contesting it super hard in shop, for instance, then it just becomes laborious just to get into the map, and it's super frustrating, super slow, super stale. Can mix it up now, especially with operators like Dockerby and Nook in the meta. You can creep around and sneak and find picks and find openings that way. So that's actually been quite enjoyable and something I've done recently to spice up the map. But generally speaking, it's it's not all that competitive. With a couple of adjustments and a couple of different routes into top floor, maybe even a way to hedge attacks from cocktail or something like that with a little bit more consistency, I think it would radically change the map and radically improve it. So maybe going forward, we'll see a rework, and I think Kafe could shoot back up. Consulate then, and this is going to go at the top of the delete pile, not quite on the same level as the two behind it, but still a map that I think has had its days. It suffers from the OG siege map meta of heavy repel game, exterior breaches in straight into sight, things that just don't hold up today. There's nothing worse than playing this map and getting spawn peeked by 5 players, and sadly as the defense, that's exactly what you need to do to try and win as well, which sure can be fun at times, but it gets tiring very quickly. And yeah, Consulate just shouldn't be in ranked anymore. I don't even know what you would do to fix the map. I think you need to block up a lot of the windows. You need to find other exterior walls up top to make entry a bit more viable. But yeah, I think if Consulate were to become more competitive, it would look very, very different to how it does today. Kanal up next, and I was very close to putting this in B tier. I really wanted to. I've actually been enjoying playing this map quite a bit, but I think that's my personal bias showing. I think it is a C tier map, very close to Kafe. It's okay. It's certainly better in its reworked form. However, again, there's very little avenues for attack to take. You often are forced into the exact same thing every round because the options are so limited. And it's a map that just hasn't developed much at all. It kind of feels the same as it did 6 months ago, a year ago, etc. And I don't see it changing going forward all too much. Again, a solid map. I used to hate this map, but once you develop a couple of strats, it's not too bad. Doesn't need to be deleted just yet. I think it's still an okay map to sneak through the veto. Up next is Bank, and I'm very tempted to put it in A tier, but I think it just gets bumped down to B tier for the fact that it is, again, a very old map. Upstairs is getting very difficult to defend. Downstairs has always been very, very similar. Even in the current meta, it does often come down to the util fight and then into a hatch drop if there's no time left. So it's quite predictable, a little laborious in that sense. The roam clear as well is very difficult. So if Jackal is banned and you're solo queuing, good luck, have fun, because you're not going to have any fun. However, on the flip side, as a 5-stack, it can be rewarding. So that's why it just sneaks in that B tier for now. And of course, it's a competitive map as well. So I think it's not too bad. It's in the middle. It's a map you don't want to play more than once in a row. Otherwise, you're going to get a headache. And finally, the map you've all been waiting for, Nighthaven Labs. Where does it land? And I'm going to put it on the tail end of A tier. Whoa, okay. A new map that doesn't suck. Now, big asterisk on this one. Nighthaven Labs is a map I've played quite a bit and developed a couple of basic strats on, so it doesn't feel terrible to play at the moment. Of course, there's a long way to go. In 6 months' time, this map could be awful. We don't want to play it anymore. It's just impossible to defend, impossible to attack, whatever. But I think at the moment, in its current state, it has at least 3 viable bomb sites. Second floor, you have first floor kitchen, and then you have basement. There's decent hard breach potential on almost every site where you can get direct entry in or close to and apply pressure on site. There's vertical on every map as well. So it has all the ingredients to be a good map. The one thing that is frustrating about it is the natural flow doesn't feel great. And it just feels like a maze when you're first learning this map. Even now, it still doesn't quite feel right. There's just a lot of narrow corridors, short corridors, 90-degree corners. Trying to navigate around that and make calls and know where information is can be difficult. But once you start to unlock this map, it's actually quite fun. And outside of the rotations between objectives, I think that the objectives themselves are pretty well made. That said, there is one huge issue that this map has inside objectives specifically, and that is the sheer number of boosts and head glitches. Kitchen is an absolute prime example of it. Add Azami into the mix, and you often, even after verting site, are going to be walking in and trying to contest half a dozen head glitch angles, and you're not going to win them out. So I think that's a big issue that this map has. Take away some of the boosts on some of these objectives, and I think it's going to slowly creep up and maybe even one day gets S tier, provided that we don't see the meta evolve too far too quickly. So it's certainly going to be an interesting one to watch. But for now, Nighthaven Labs, it's in A tier. That will conclude the video though. Here is the tier list. So Chalet, Club, and Oregon, S tier. Then we have Skyscraper, Villa, and Nighthaven in A tier. Bank, Coast, Border, Theme in B. Outback, Kafe, Kanal in C. And then to delete, we have Consulate, Emerald Plains, and Stadium. If you agree, if you disagree, let me know in the comments. I'm sure there's going to be lots of opinions on this video. Of course, I would appreciate your support. Like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.